The chamber of the Galactic Conclave was a monument to peace, or so its designers had claimed. Its vast, curving walls were made of a living crystal that glowed with soft, calming light. Representatives from 100 species floated or perched at their stations, their voices a low murmur that echoed in the open space. Today, the murmur was angry, fearful, and getting louder. At the center of the debate was a visual feed. It showed a blue and green world, third from its star, and next to it, schematics of primitive fission reactors, chemical propulsion rockets, and thousands of conflicting political borders. Sol 3. Humanity. Ambassador Jinsu of Earth stood on the small speaking platform. He was a man in his late 50s, his black hair streaked with gray, his face carefully calm. He wore a simple, dark suit. He looked terribly small and alone against the grandeur of the aliens around him. "Esteemed members of the Conclave," Jinsu said, his voice amplified and translated instantly. "You see a species taking its first clumsy steps into the galaxy. Yes, we are divided. Yes, our history is marked by conflict. But it is also marked by overcoming that conflict. Every signal we have received, every piece of your benevolent, welcoming literature you have broadcast, speaks of unity in diversity. We ask only for the chance to prove we belong here, under your guiding light." A snort, a wet, guttural sound, came from the Tyrillian delegation. Their representative, Patriarch Volok, rose. He was massive, his scaled body the color of dried blood, his yellow eyes unblinking. Where Jinsu looked small, Vorlak looked built for breaking things. Benevolent guiding light? Vorlak's translated voice was a deep sneer. "We see a plague of primates. Look at their data. They have not yet unified their own planet. They possess weapons of mass destruction. They turn upon themselves. Their neural patterns show exceptional capacity for violence, deception, and irrational persistence. They are a chaos vector. To allow them free travel is to allow a virus into a healthy body. The only logical, safe course is a controlled, preemptive sterilization of their home system before they become a true threat." A ripple of agreement went through many delegations. The insectoid cricks, who valued absolute social order, clicked their mandibles in support. The gaseous entities of the Nimbus Coalition swirled with anxious colors. They were all older, more established species. Humanity was a loud, sharp rock thrown into their quiet pond. Jinsu felt a cold sweat on his back. Patriarch Volok speaks of potential. We speak of proven action. We have broken no laws. We have threatened no one. To condemn us for what we might do is the height of injustice. It is the very chaos you claim to fear. It is not injustice. It is gardening, Vorlak replied flatly. You remove the weed before it chokes the garden. A first strike is a simple, clean solution. A mercy, even. It will be over in moments for them. No prolonged war. No drawn-out suffering. The vote was being called. A simple measure. Authorize a conclave-sanctioned first strike to be carried out by the Tyrillian fleet, the most powerful military force present. In exchange, the Tyrillians would get exclusive mining rights in a few peripheral systems. It was a cold political trade. Jinsu's heart hammered against his ribs. He saw the tallies beginning to appear on the central hologram. Green for yes. Red for no. More green lights were winking on. He looked out across the sea of alien faces. Some looked away, ashamed. Others met his gaze with indifference. They did not see a person. They saw a problem to be solved. The feeling of isolation was total. Humanity's fate was being decided by beings who saw them as little more than data points on a threat assessment. Then, a new light glowed. It was not green or red, but a soft silver blue. It came from the oldest station in the chamber, a place that was almost always silent. The Elothian enclosure. A shape moved within it. The Oracle. Few had ever seen him move. He was ancient, so old his species had faded from the galaxy, leaving him as the last caretaker of their knowledge. His form was vaguely humanoid, but seemed made of woven light and shadow. He did not use a translator. His words formed directly in the minds of everyone present, a whisper that felt as old as stardust. "You are considering a grave error." The chamber fell utterly silent. Even Vorlich paused, his head tilting. The Oracle almost never spoke on current affairs. "You look upon this new life and see only its sharp edges. You do not see the core. I have traced the threads of their potential. They are not like you. Your species learned war, then learned to fear its cost. You built peace upon the memory of pain." The Oracle's gaze seemed to pass over every delegate, finally resting on Vorlich. "The humans. They learn differently. They absorb conflict. They metabolize it. To strike them is to give them a question, and they will not rest until they have the answer. To wound them is to teach them exactly how you cause pain, and they will learn that lesson, improve upon it, and return it to you. To kill one of them." The Oracle's mental voice deepened, carrying a profound and weary sorrow. "To kill one is to create a ghost that 10 others will vow to avenge. You think you will bring them a quick end. You will only bring them a purpose. A single, unified, terrible purpose." He paused, letting the words sink into the silent chamber. "If you strike first, you will ignite a fire you cannot contain. You cannot negotiate with a fire. You cannot reason with it. It only consumes until there is nothing left to burn. If you strike first, they will never stop. Not until you are dust and memory. Leave them be." This is not a warning from a sage. It is a prediction from a mechanic. You are about to pour fuel on a reaction you do not understand and cannot control. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, Vorlich let out a harsh, barking laugh. The spell was broken. Poetic nonsense. The patriarch boomed. The ramblings of a being who has forgotten what real power looks like. "We have dreadnoughts. They have tin cans. We have plasma lances. They have projectile weapons. This is not a philosophical debate. It is a tactical equation, and the solution is clear and simple." The green lights on the voting tally flared brighter. The measure passed. The conclave, swayed by fear and Vorlich's cold confidence, had sanctioned the destruction of humanity. Jinsu stood frozen on the platform. The air felt too thin. He watched as Vorlich began issuing orders to his fleet commanders, their images flickering on subscreens. The attack would target New Hope, the Proxima Centauri B outpost. A demonstration. A clean surgical removal of the problem. As the chamber erupted into a buzz of post-vote procedure, Jinsu's eyes were drawn back to the Elothian enclosure. The Oracle was looking directly at him. Across the vast distance, through the view screen and the light years, the ancient being's gaze held Jinsu's. There was no anger there, no judgment, only a deep, bottomless pity and a certainty that made Jinsu's blood turn to ice. The Oracle gave a single, slow, sorrowful nod. The connection broke. Jinsu stumbled back to the human embassy's tiny assigned room. He had to send a warning, but he knew it was too late. The decision was made. The Tyrillian hammer was already falling. All he could do was watch the feeds and remember the Oracle's words echoing in the silent, terrified space of his own mind. They will never stop. Outside the crystal chamber, in the cold dark, Tyrillian warships powered up their drives and began their jump toward Proxima Centauri. The news did not come to Earth as a declaration of war. It did not come as a desperate plea for help. It came as raw, unedited data, a cold and screaming torrent of information that flooded the global nets. First, a simple lag in the quantum-entangled data stream from the New Hope colony on Proxima Centauri b. A 1-second delay. Then, two, technicians at the Lunar Listening Post, a young woman named Sumin, noted it as a minor anomaly. Then the sensor logs began to arrive. Not a coherent message, but the colony's automated defense and astronomy systems, dumping everything they saw in their final milliseconds. Massive energy spikes, signatures that matched no known human technology, gravimetric distortions indicative of warp point ruptures far larger than any human ship could make, thermal blooms of impossible intensity across the colony's main habitation dome. Then, the final audiovisual fragments. A shaky feed from a helmet cam belonging to Min Seok, a geologist. He had been on a surface survey. The sky above New Hope's ruddy plains was suddenly filled with angular, terrifying shadows blocking the sun. The camera jerked upwards. What in God's name? Min Seok's voice was calm, scientific, curious. Then a searing lance of greenish plasma, silent in the vacuum, cut across the horizon and connected with the dome. The camera's audio picked up his sudden, sharp intake of breath. Not a scream. A gasp of pure, distilled understanding. He panned down, his hands steady, focusing his helmet's recorder on the weapon's impact point, on the energy corona, on the specific frequency of the radiation bleed. Signature is cohesive plasma, magnetic bottle decay suggests. He was analyzing it even as the shockwave from the exploding dome, a wave of debris and dust, began to race across the plain toward him. His last words were not a message to his family. They were data. Record all of this. Send it home. Let them see exactly what did this. Then the feed dissolved into static. That was it. No heroic last stand. No final curse against the aliens. Just a man doing his job until the very last second, making sure the enemy's blueprint was captured. On Earth, there was no single moment of panicked decision. Instead, a strange glacial quiet descended. The planetary alert systems, which usually blared with noise and flashing lights, went silent. The screens in command centers across the globe simply displayed Min Seok's final feed. The sensor logs and the conclave's voting record, which Ambassador Jin-Soo had managed to transmit just before the attack, dot in a hardened bunker deep under the Korean peninsula. General Taeyang watched the feed for the 10th time. His face was a stone mask. Next to him, Dr. Yoonji, the head of Advanced Materials, stared at the spectral analysis of the Tyrillian plasma beam. Her eyes were red, but her hands were perfectly still on the table. They hit New Hope, a young colonel said, his voice cracking. Why not Earth? This was a demonstration, a show of force. It was a mistake, Taeyang said, his voice low and rough. They think they are teaching us a lesson in fear. They are teaching us a lesson in their capabilities. He pointed a finger at the frozen image of the Tyrillian dreadnought. They showed us their hand. Yoonji nodded slowly. Min Seok got us more than they know. The plasma coherence. It's brilliant, but it has a decay flaw in its magnetic sheath. A vulnerability to a specific pulsed electromagnetic frequency. She pulled up another data stream. Their hull composition. It's a carbon ceramic lattice, superb for heat dispersion from energy weapons. But it is brittle under repeated, localized kinetic impact. They designed their ships to fight enemies like themselves, who use energy weapons. We don't have their energy weapons, Taeyang said. No, Yoonji agreed, a cold light in her eyes. We have railguns. We have tungsten rods. We have rocks and guidance computers. And now we know exactly where to hit them. The door slid open, and Ambassador Jin-Soo entered. He looked aged a decade, his calm diplomatic facade utterly gone, replaced by a hollowed-out grimness. The conclave has officially regretted the unfortunate incident, he said, his voice dripping with a bitterness they had never heard from him. They have offered humanitarian aid to the survivors. There are no survivors. They have condemned the excessive force of the Trillians while affirming their right to maintain galactic security. It is pure politics. We are alone. We were always alone, Tai Yang said. We just didn't know it. He turned to a world map on the main screen, where status lights from every major nation were blinking from red to a steady, solid green. Unanimous. The vote is in. From every council, every committee. There is no debate. What vote? Jinsu asked, though he already knew. The only vote that matters now, Yunji said. The oracle told them. If you strike first, they will never stop. He was right. But he was only half right. She brought up a simple, stark document on the main screen. It had no grand title. It was just called Directive Zero. Taiyang read the core tenet aloud. From this moment, for every hostile action taken against humanity or its interests, a retaliatory action will be taken. Not proportional, not negotiated, relentless, immediate. The objective is not victory in battle. The objective is to make the cost of continued hostility unacceptable. We will not fight their war. We will force them to fight ours. This is a doctrine of total war, Jinsu whispered, horrified. It is a doctrine of total reply, Taiyang corrected him. They wrote the first line of this story. We will write every line after, until the story ends. And we will not be the ones to write the end. Across Earth, the gears began to turn, not with panic, but with a terrifying, focused efficiency. Factories that made ground cars retooled to make missile guidance systems. University physics departments became weapons research labs. The stock markets did not crash. They were suspended, replaced by a global resource allocation network. The old national flags still flew, but beside them now hung a new, simple emblem, a black circle on a gray field representing an eye, a target, and a closed door. Jinsu looked from Taiyang's hardened face to Yunji's analytical one. He thought of Min Seok, the geologist, using his last breath to recite data. He understood. The time for being a diplomat was over. The Trillians had not just killed 1,000 colonists. They had killed humanity's childhood. What was being born in its place, in these quiet, dark rooms, was something the galaxy had not anticipated. The oracle had warned them not to start a fire they could not put out. But as Jinsu watched the plans for the first kinetic kill vehicles take shape on the screen symbol, brutal, designed around a single flaw in an enemy's shield, he realized the truth. The Trillians hadn't just started a fire. They had handed humanity the match, the fuel, and a detailed map of everything that was flammable. And humanity, with cold, tear-streaked faces, was learning how to burn. The Trillian command ship, Judgment of Vorlek, hung in the void near the desolate asteroid belt of the Kappa Fornacis system. On the bridge, Patriarch Vorlek watched the sensor reports with growing irritation. The human colony at New Hope was ash. The demonstration had been perfect. Yet the expected signal a human surrender, a plea for mercy. The frantic calls from Earth to the conclave had not come. There was only silence from Sol. Perhaps they are in shock, suggested Sub-Commander Kale, a younger Trillian whose scales held a hint of cautious blue. Shock is a prelude to submission, Vorlek rumbled. They will learn their place. Send the third spear to their outer planet, the one they call Neptune. Destroy their listening posts there. Remind them our reach is infinite. The third spear, a swift destroyer, broke formation and shot towards the edge of the system. The operation was routine. The human defenses were primitive orbital platforms, easily brushed aside. The destroyer unleashed a volley of plasma, reducing the platforms to molten slag. Mission accomplished. As the destroyer turned to rejoin the fleet, a proximity alarm blared. From behind the bulk of a small, icy moon, a swarm of objects emerged. They were not ships. They were jagged chunks of rock, each the size of a ground vehicle, fitted with crude chemical thrusters and a simple guidance computer. The Tyrillian gunners laughed, a sound like grinding stones. They targeted the rocks, blasting them to dust with pinpoint accuracy. It was too easy. Then, one rock, hidden behind the debris cloud of its siblings, shot past the defensive fire. It carried no warhead. It was just rock and momentum. It struck the destroyer's engine nacelle at a relative velocity of 10 kilometers per second. The carbon-ceramic lattice, designed to dissipate energy weapon heat, shattered under the kinetic blow. A catastrophic rupture vented plasma into space. The third spear was not destroyed, but it was crippled, tumbling helplessly. A tow vessel had to be dispatched to retrieve it, a humiliating and resource-draining task. On Earth, in the command center, General Taiyang watched the feed. "Good," he said, no triumph in his voice. "Their point defense is optimized for fewer, larger targets. They underestimated the number of rocks we would throw. Note the reaction time of their port-side battery. It is 0.3 seconds slower. A software routing delay. Log it. This was the new pattern. The Tyrillians would make a move, a sharp, brutal strike, and humanity would punch back, not at the main fleet, but at the edges. The punches were not meant to win. They were meant to study, to exhaust, and to send a message. When a Tyrillian supply convoy jumped into a supposedly secure system, they found the navigation beacon was broadcasting a corrupted signal. It didn't guide them into the station. It guided them through a field of high-velocity debris, shredding the unarmed freighters. The beacon, upon forensic analysis, was found to be a perfect copy of a Tyrillian model, built with human materials. When the Tyrillians occupied a mined-out human asteroid base in the Sirius sector, they found it stripped and empty. Then, the life support systems activated, flooding the halls with a carefully engineered aerosol. It was harmless to all known life except Tyrillians. For them, it bonded with the keratin in their scales, causing a maddening, incessant itch that no medical scanner could diagnose or cure. The occupying battalion had to be evacuated, scratching themselves raw. Their combat effectiveness zero. Dr. Yunji's lab was the heart of this effort. "They think in terms of fleet actions and territory," she explained to her team, which now included biologists, psychologists, and sociologists pulled from every university on Earth. "We must think in terms of systems. Their military is a system. Their culture is a system. Their biology is a system. Find a pressure point and apply pressure." A young engineer named Dayan presented his project. He had analyzed the communication protocols of the Tyrillian fleet. They use a layered quantum encryption. It is unbreakable. But they also use low-bandwidth clear text channels for basic system alerts and distress calls. It is a cultural habit. They assumed no one would dare listen. He played a sound file. It was the final chaotic moments from the bridge of the third spear, the panic in the gunners' voices, the hiss of escaping atmosphere. He had spliced it together with audio fragments from New Hope, the screams, the alarms, the calm voice of Minseok. Then he looped it. "I call it an echo mine," Dayan said, his face pale but determined. "We seed their lanes with simple drones. When a Tyrillian ship passes, the drone detects its engine signature and broadcasts this sound on every one of their open channels. It cannot be blocked without shutting down vital internal comms. They will hear their own fear, mixed with ours, every time they move." Taiyang approved it without hesitation. The psychological warfare was as devastating as the physical. Tyrillian crews, raised on stories of their own invincibility, became jumpy. A sensor ghost was no longer just a glitch. It was the prelude to a swarm of silent rocks. A minor system failure felt like the first step toward a humiliating, itchy death. Morale began to fracture. Sub-Commander Kale dared to voice the unease. Patriarch, our losses in ships are minimal. But the cost, the constant attrition, the diversion of resources to protect every convoy, to scan every asteroid, it is draining us. The humans are not fighting a war. They are conducting a corrosion. Vorlich slammed a clawed fist on the command console. Do not speak their weakness. They are rodents biting at our heels. We will find their nest and burn it out. Prepare the fleet for a direct assault on their main shipyard at Mars. The order was given. But as the mighty Tyrillian armada gathered for its decisive blow, a new report came in. A deep space human probe, a fragile thing barely more than a camera and an engine, had just flown through the outer reaches of the Tyrillian home system. It didn't fire a shot. It didn't drop a bomb. It simply took high-resolution images of Tyrillus Prime, of its major orbital docks, its prominent cities, and broadcast them on a wide-frequency loop towards the Conclave and Earth. Before self-destructing got, the message was not in words. It was in the act itself. We are here. We can see your home. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is safe. On the bridge of the judgment of Vorlich, Vorlich stared at the captured images of his own world, now displayed on every human and conclave network. For the first time, a cold trickle of doubt seeped through his rage. This was not the reaction of a defeated enemy. This was the methodical, patient response of a predator studying its prey. The oracle's words echoed in his mind, no longer a mystic's rambling, but a chilling manual. If you wound them, you teach them your weaknesses. He had taught them so much, and they were learning faster than he could possibly imagine. The war was no longer a Tyrillian military campaign. It was a test, and humanity was writing the answers in blood, steel, and unbreakable will. The galactic conclave chamber no longer hummed with quiet debate. It thrummed with a tense, sickly anxiety. On the central hologram, two data streams played side by side. One showed the steady, proud decline of the Tyrillian expansion index, a graph that had climbed for centuries, now plummeting. The other showed a simple, chilling human counter, a list of systems, each with a timestamp and a phrase like logistical harassment, successful, or enemy morale incident, confirmed. Ambassador Jinsu stood once more on the speaking platform. He wore not a diplomat's suit, but a simple, dark uniform without insignia. He looked older, harder, like stone worn smooth by a relentless river. The polite silence he once faced was gone. Now, the chamber watched him with a kind of terrified awe. You see the data, Jinsu said, his voice flat, carrying without need for amplification. You sanctioned a first strike to remove a threat. You created a response instead. The Tyrillian war machine is not being defeated in battle. It is being unraveled, thread by thread. He gestured, and the hologram zoomed in on the Tyrillian homeworld. Tyrillus Prime. The images taken by the human probe were now overlaid with tactical markers. Not of weapons, but of infrastructure, power grids, water purification centers, orbital transport hubs. We do not broadcast this to threaten, Jinsu said. A statement so cold it drew gasps. We broadcast it to inform. The Patriarch believed he was fighting a war of conquest. He is wrong. He is now fighting a war of existence. Every Tyrillian credit spent on repairing a mine supply route is a credit not spent on their children. Every ship assigned to guard a convoy from our rocks is a ship not exploring new frontiers. You have not made them weaker. You have made them smaller. And you have made us into the single unifying fact of their lives. From the Tyrillian enclosure, now occupied by a lower-ranking diplomat who refused to meet his eyes, there was only sullen silence. The other delegations shifted uncomfortably. The Crix delegates clicked their mandibles in a nervous rhythm. The human was not pleading. He was testifying. Your oracle warned you, Jinsu continued, locking eyes with the Alothian enclosure, where the ancient being sat motionless. He said we would never stop. He was correct. But he implied we were a mindless fire. We are not. We are a scalpel. And you have given us the exact map of your vulnerabilities. Not just the Tyrillians. All of you. He let that hang in the air. The unspoken threat was far more potent than any warship. The time for your politics is over, Jinsu stated. We will now speak to the Tyrillians directly. And we will do so from a position of our choosing. Deep within the armored heart of the Tyrillian command network, Sub-Commander Kale pored over the casualty reports. They weren't lists of ships lost. Those were few. They were lists of missions failed. A mining operation on a resource-rich moon, halted for 6 months due to persistent autonomous drone activity. A prestigious research outpost, evacuated after the water supply was found laced with a compound that caused temporary paralysis in Tyrillian physiology. The economic reports were worse. Insurance rates for interstellar shipping had increased by 800%. New colonies were on hold. The great, proud momentum of his species had ground to a terrified halt. He received a secure, personal data packet. It was not from a Tyrillian source. It was marked with a simple, black and gray emblem of humanity. Inside was not a weapon schematic or a threat. It was an analysis. A cold, dispassionate assessment of Tyrillian societal structure, predicting civil unrest on 3 major colony worlds within the next standard cycle due to resource shortages caused by the war. It detailed the growing factionalism within the military, pinpointing the traditionalist units loyal to Volok and the progressive blocs who saw the futility. It ended with a single sentence: continued resistance accelerates internal collapse. It was signed, Strategic Planning Group, Earth. Kale felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. They were not just fighting their ships. They were modeling their society, predicting its breaking points. He took the data to Vorlok. The Primates seek to poison our resolve with their words. Vorlok roared, smashing the console displaying the report. They fear our final, overwhelming assault. The fleet will regroup at the staging area in the Cygnus sector. We will gather our full strength and punch straight for their Earth. We will shatter their world and be done with this. Kale looked at his patriarch. Truly looked at him. He saw not a mighty leader, but a cornered beast, reacting only with greater fury because it had no other answer. Patriarch, Kale said, choosing his words with care. To gather the fleet so openly. They will know. They will be waiting. Let them wait. Let them throw their rocks. Our shields will hold. As the orders went out and the mighty Tyrillian armada began its slow, ponderous movement to the Cygnus sector, a different kind of human operation was already in motion. It was not a fleet action. It was a single, sharp needle, aimed with surgical precision. The target was not a ship, not a base. It was a data vault on a heavily fortified Tyrillian relay station near Cygnus. Its defenses were designed to repel a fleet assault. They were not designed for a stealth insertion capsule. Built from radar-absorbent materials and powered by a stolen Tyrillian energy signature. That detached from a piece of comet debris out inside the capsule were 5 humans. Their leader was Sujin. She was not a soldier in the traditional sense. She was a specialist in information systems and xenocultural psychology. Her team's mission was not to destroy, but to steal. Their objective, the primary cultural and genealogical archive of the Tyrillian species. The operation was a silent ballet of cutting through backup power conduits, bypassing security algorithms with logic bombs Yunji's team had designed. and moving through service corridors mapped from stolen schematics. They encountered 2 guards. Sujin used non-lethal sonic pulsars that targeted the Tyrillian inner ear, leaving them unconscious and disoriented. No death, only silence. They reached the core. The archive was a massive crystal matrix, glowing with soft light. It held the collective history, art, lineage, and identity of a species. To the Tyrillians, it was sacred. Sujin connected a data siphon. For 3 minutes, the entire recorded soul of the Tyrillian race flowed into human storage drives. Then they left, planting small charges not on the archive, but on the station's external communications array dot. As their capsule sped away, the charges detonated, severing the station's ability to cry for help. The theft was complete, and the Tyrillian High Command would not know it had happened for hours. When the news finally reached the judgment of Vorlok, the reaction was not rage, but a profound, chilling silence. Vorlok stared at the report, his claws trembling. They had not bombed a city. They had not killed a hero. They had taken their history. They had proven that the very heart of Tyrillian identity was not safe. Kale looked at his patriarch's face and saw the final, crumbling wall of defiance break. The humans were not trying to win a battle. They were systematically proving that every aspect of Tyrillian life, their military, their economy, their society, and now their heritage was a point of vulnerability. The oracle's voice seemed to whisper in the suddenly cold air of the bridge. If you kill one, you will meet 10 more. The humans had gone beyond that. They hadn't killed one. They had kidnapped the memory of everyone who had ever lived. The message was clear. We can erase you from history itself. The path to Earth now seemed not like a road to victory, but a gauntlet through an endless, inventive hell. Vorlak's order to regroup in the Cygnus sector sat in the air, now feeling not like a plan, but a death sentence. The Tyrillian fleet hung in the void of the Cygnus sector, a formidable array of shadows against the nebula's glow. But the grandeur was a lie. On the bridge of the judgment of Vorlok, the silence was thick and heavy. Crew moved with a hushed, mechanical obedience. The reports told of supply shortages, of low-level crews listening to Forbidden's human echo transmissions, of a paralyzing fear that their next jump would be into a field of silent, waiting rocks. Patriarch Vorlok sat in his command throne, but he no longer filled it. The theft of the archive had broken something fundamental. He was not just fighting an enemy. He was fighting a ghost that knew his deepest secrets. His claws tapped a nervous rhythm on the armrest. The order to jump toward Sol, to launch the final, crushing assault on Earth, remained unsaid. He found he could not give it. A new signal pierced the fleet's comms. It was not an attack. It was a request for a direct, secure channel. The source was human. The message was addressed to him, Vorlok, by name. The attached key was a fragment of data from the stolen archive, a childhood lullaby from his own clan, a melody no human should possess. He accepted the channel. On the screen, 3 humans appeared. He recognized Ambassador Jin Su, now in his Stark uniform. To his left was General Taiyang, his face unreadable. To his right was a woman he did not know, Dr. Yunji. They stood in a simple gray room. Patriarch, Shinsu began, his tone neither hostile nor friendly. It was factual. Your fleet is assembled. You are prepared for a final battle. We are prepared to receive you. Vorlak's lips peeled back from his teeth. You dare to. We do not desire your attack, Taiyang interrupted, his voice like gravel. We have analyzed the projected casualty figures for you. For us, the result is the extinction of your fleet and the severe scarring of our homeworld. It is a wasteful equation. We are here to offer you a better one. You offer terms? Vorlok spat. You are rodents. Dr. Yunji spoke then, her voice cool and clear. "We are the ones who have your archive, Patriarch. We have analyzed your genealogical records, your historical migration patterns, your art. We know you are not a rodent species. You are a proud, clan-based people with a rich history of overcoming harsh environments. Your early survival was a testament to resilience. We respect that." The words, so calmly delivered, were more disorienting than any insult. They were not gloating. They were assessing. "Why show us this?" Volek demanded, suspicion warring with a terrible, desperate curiosity. "To prove a point," Jinsu said. "The Oracle warned you we would never stop." He was right. We have not stopped. We have demonstrated that we can fight you at every level: military, economic, psychological, cultural. We can continue until the Tyrillian species is a broken, isolated memory. We have the will, and we have the method." He leaned slightly forward, "But today we choose to stop." The words hung in the air on both bridges, utterly unbelievable. "You? Choose?" Sub-Commander Kale whispered from his station, unable to stay silent. "Yes," Taiyang said. "The lesson is complete. You are broken. Not by our superior strength, but by your own fear of us. You struck first. We proved we would never stop. That proof is now galactic law. The war is over." "On what conditions?" Vorlik rasped, his mind reeling. Yunji manipulated a control off-screen. A data packet transferred. "These are the terms. Full withdrawal from all systems claimed or occupied since the attack on New Hope. Public reparations to the families of the lost, to be held in trust by the Conclave. And the permanent demilitarization of your border with human space." The terms were severe, but not annihilation. They were survivable. "And our archive?" Volek asked, the question tearing from him. Jinsu nodded to someone off-screen. A moment later, a verification signal arrived on the Tyrillian console. It showed the entire cultural and genealogical dataset, intact, being transmitted back to a Tyrillian receiver on their homeworld. No copy kept, the data stream certified. They were giving it back. The act of mercy was more devastating than any weapon. It was a calculated, absolute humiliation. It proved they could take the most precious thing imaginable, and then disdainfully return it because it had served its purpose. It proved their total control. "You return our soul as a lesson?" Volek said, his voice hollow. "As the final proof," Jinsu corrected. "We do not want your soul. We do not want your territory. We only wanted you to understand the principle. Attack us, and you dedicate your species to attrition. That principle is now established. It is the only victory we require." The channel closed. The Tyrillian fleet remained, motionless, in the silent nebula. The order to jump to Earth would never come. The war was over, because the humans had decided it was over. Weeks later, in the Galactic Conclave chamber, the formal surrender was signed. The Tyrillians were a broken people, led by a council that now included Sub-Commander Kale. Vorlok was gone, removed by his own clan. The chamber was silent as Jinsu approached the Oracle's enclosure. The ancient being's form seemed more solid now, his light less faint. He looked at Jinsu with those timeless eyes. "You knew," Jinsu said softly, not as an accusation, but as an acknowledgement. "I saw the threads," the Oracle's voice whispered in his mind. "I saw a species that defined itself not by the peace it kept, but by the wars it endured. You are creatures of context. You needed a threat to become your most unified, most terrible, most inventive selves. I did not know if you would choose to be a fire that consumed the galaxy, or a fire contained within a forge, used to temper a new reality. We chose containment," Jinsu said. "You chose to weaponize mercy. You showed fury, then restraint. You showed you could take everything, then gave it back. You have not made the galaxy safe for humanity. You have made it terrified of provoking you. That is a more durable peace than any treaty. The oracle looked out at the assembled species, all watching the human with new, deeply unsettled eyes. The warning was necessary. They had to know the cost of lighting the match. Now they have seen the fire. And they have seen that you alone control the fuel. You are not the guardians of peace, Jinsu of Earth. You are the guardians of a promise. And that is a far heavier burden. Jinsu looked at the emblems of 100 species, at the cowed Turillians, at the glittering chamber built for a peace that had always been fragile. He thought of Minseok, the geologist. He thought of the rocks hurled at starships, and the lullaby returned to a broken enemy. The oracle was right. They had not won a war. They had established a fact. A simple, terrifying fact that now flowed through the galactic subconscious. Do not start what you cannot finish. For the humans, quiet in their corner of the stars, mourning. They're dead and studying the returned archive, not for weaknesses, but for understanding, will certainly finish it. And in that dreadful, respectful silence, a new kind of peace began.